Sagittarius, let me be blunt, you didn't come here for a weather report about your week. You came here because your spirit doesn't settle for bland predictions. You want the bigger picture, the sharper arrow, the truth that burns hotter than comfort. I've spent more than 30 years walking this path, studying astrology not as superstition, but as a living language of the human soul. Psychology taught me about patterns. Philosophy taught me about paradox. And Buddhist wisdom taught me that sometimes, the loudest truth is hidden in silence. This week, September 8th through the 14th, the universe isn't handing you a gentle fortune cookie. It's giving you a flaming arrow. What you do with it, that's the story. Do you aim it at growth, or let it burn your hands because you're too distracted by noise? The cosmos isn't whispering anymore. It's practically shouting at you to move. And Sag, if anyone is going to answer that call with a laugh and a leap, it's you. This isn't just another horoscope. This is the year of triumph 2025, and you, the chosen ones of Sagittarius, are stepping into a week where destiny wants receipts. As someone who has watched Sagittarius energy in the wild for 3 decades across glass-walled boardrooms, scrappy garages that call themselves startups, and the beautifully chaotic ecosystem of freelancing, let me tell you what this week actually asks of you, not a grand gesture, but a grounded one. You're still the archer with the horizon in your eyes, but instead of firing 12 arrows at once and calling it strategy, you're choosing one target and drawing a clean, steady bead on it. The vibe is slow burn earth, the archetype of patient craftsmanship, build the road, then drive it. In psychology we call this the trust dividend. Consistency cues reliability, and reliability invites responsibility. When your colleagues see your wattage drop from blinding to focused, they stop squinting and start collaborating. Ideas you tossed out months ago suddenly get callbacks because you're not just interesting, you're dependable. This is also classic Buddhist right effort, not frantic action, not sleepy avoidance, but sustainable attention repeated without drama. Practically, it means you outline before you improvise, you schedule the meeting before you manifest the outcome, you open the spreadsheet and resist the primal urge to flee to a new browser tab labeled inspiration. Humor me for a minute, if your work life were a kitchen, you're not flambeing for applause, you're braising for depth. No one claps for braise until they taste it, but when they do, they ask for seconds and the chef's schedule fills itself. So if a meaty project thumps onto your desk, don't sprint, don't stall, center your breath, break it into parts, and tackle the next right piece. Call the stakeholder, clarify scope, write the first ugly draft, and let iteration polish it. Your natural optimism becomes jet fuel once it's poured into a well-built engine, otherwise it's just a puddle waiting for a match. A little American candor here. The person who gets the nod is rarely the loudest dreamer, but almost always the one who shows up on time with a plan, a timeline, and a polite refusal to panic. Sprinkle in one more psychological truth: the mere exposure effect works for reliability, too, and your measured rhythm becomes its own brand. And since you asked for humor, yes, you may still order the triple espresso, but now it powers a checklist rather than a tangent, and yes, you may still improvise, but only after the outline stops crying. Treat your calendar like a contract with your better self, and treat interruptions like weather. Acknowledge, adjust, keep driving. The headline isn't speed, it's traction. That's how you step into the year of triumph 2025, not by crashing the gates with bravado, but by walking through them with a blueprint in hand and quiet confidence that you will finish what you start. Sagittarius, let's talk frankly about money, because your relationship with it has always been a little theatrical, a little philosophical, and often delightfully reckless. You're not Taurus, carefully stacking coins like bricks in a fortress. You're not Capricorn, clutching resources as proof of security and authority. No, for you money has always been something closer to jet fuel, a means to keep the adventure moving. You use it to buy books you may or may not finish, to sign up for retreats in distant mountains, to fund midnight flights across the globe because you swear wisdom is hiding somewhere between Gate 32 and an overpriced airport latte. And while these choices often make for entertaining stories, they rarely make for stable ledgers. But this week has a different texture, one less about chaos and more about slow, deliberate growth. The financial energy isn't the roar of a jackpot machine, it's the steady hum of interest compounding, the subtle reward of seeds planted long ago finally breaking through the soil. It's not glamorous, but it's real. As someone who has studied both the stars and human behavior for decades, I can tell you that abundance is never solely about luck. Astrology points to Jupiter, your ruling planet, as the archetype of expansion, and psychology adds that expansion comes through a mindset of flow rather than grasping. When you treat money as a tool for growth, something to leverage rather than a shiny trophy to display, you tap into a magnetic rhythm. Opportunities expand not because you begged them to, but because you aligned with them. This week may present an invitation to invest. It might be a professional course that hones your skill set, a wellness retreat that clears your inner clutter, a business idea that has been waiting patiently in the back of your notebook, or even something as mundane but necessary as improving your health. But here's where Buddhist wisdom offers a nudge: mindfulness in spending is as important as mindfulness in breathing. Pause before you reach for your credit card. Ask whether this purchase nourishes your path or distracts it. Write it down, budget it, map it. Contrary to your suspicion, structure isn't the enemy of freedom, it's the scaffolding that allows freedom to reach higher. And for humor's sake, let's be honest, you don't need 7 astrology apps on your phone. One is enough. Spend that subscription money on something tangible, like upgrading your internet so your cosmic downloads don't freeze mid-epiphany. Strategy does not kill your spontaneity, it makes sure your spontaneity has gas in the tank. This is how the chosen ones of the Year of Triumph 2025 will use wealth not as vanity, but as leverage for purpose, not as a shiny distraction, but as a steady force propelling you toward a destiny that's been waiting with quiet patience for you to finally act like you deserve it. Love has always been the one frontier Sagittarius cannot chart on a map, though heaven knows you've tried. You plan your journeys, you sketch your goals, you chase horizons with the gusto of a centaur charging into the unknown, yet romance has a habit of ambushing you at gas stations along the way, spilling coffee on your roadmap and laughing while you scramble. This week, the stars don't simply nudge your heart, they rattle it. If you are single, there may be a gaze that lingers a little too long, a voice that resonates deeper than small talk, or a colleague who suddenly seems to be auditioning for a role in your personal epic. What they crave is not just the surface wit you wield so easily, but the philosopher beneath, the one who can argue the meaning of life at midnight and still make jokes about the quality of diner pancakes. If you are already partnered, prepare for an unusual shift. Your freedom-loving nature is intact, but emotional intimacy feels less like a trap and more like a trampoline, springing you upward rather than holding you down. For once, closeness becomes oxygen to your fire, not water on it. And here Buddhist teaching provides a useful frame. True love is not possession but reflection, a mirror where your soul recognizes itself more fully. This week, that mirror may show up as a candid confession, an unexpected laugh that softens the edges of routine, or a tender silence that says more than words. Sagittarius, resist the urge to run toward the next horizon, lean in instead. Sometimes the greatest adventures aren't written in distant landscapes but in the delicate architecture of connection, where two people dare to see each other clearly and still choose to stay. And yes, it might even be scarier than skydiving without a parachute, but at least here, you get to hold someone's hand on the way down. Sagittarius, let us step back from the heroic rhythm of progress for a moment and admit what every seasoned researcher of human nature knows: growth never arrives in a straight line, and clarity rarely shows up on demand. You may be striding forward with plans, goals, and that infectious Sagittarian bravado, only to find yourself suddenly halted by a fog thick enough to make you question whether you even put your shoes on correctly this morning. One moment you are drawing blueprints for an empire, the next you are staring at your own to-do list as though it were written in hieroglyphics. This confusion is not a punishment, nor is it a cosmic prank designed to trip you. It is, in fact, part of the paradox of becoming. In astrology, we understand that Sagittarius craves horizons precisely because they shift. The promise of a new frontier keeps you alive. But Buddhist teachings remind us that sometimes the only way to truly see the road is to stop demanding visibility and instead allow the mist to settle on its own. Psychologists call this self-regulation, the ability to hold steady when the nervous system wants to bolt, while I prefer to call it the secret ingredient to wisdom. Pausing just for a breath, a day, or a conversation becomes the difference between rushing into chaos and responding with clarity. So this week, before you sign the contract, declare your love, or swipe your card, take that pause. Let your higher self have a word, because she has the annoying habit of being quiet until you've made tea. And if anyone calls you indecisive, smile and inform them that you are currently in consultation with your soul's board of directors, and the chairwoman is not to be rushed. Now, once the fog clears, the universe tosses you your next great challenge, planning. Yes, I know, Sagittarius, that word makes you want to sprint toward the nearest open field, but stay with me. Planning for you does not mean strangling your spontaneity, it means creating what I like to call structured freedom. Begin your day not with 37 ambitions, but with 3 precise goals. Write down the steps. Name the resources. And if coffee makes the list, honor it as sacred. Here psychology and practicality meet the mythic archer. When your fire is channeled into a single arrow, it becomes unstoppable. This is how great leaders, artists, and thinkers, many of them Sagittarians, turn their passions into legacies. And it is how the chosen ones of the Year of Triumph 2025 will carve their mark, not waiting for fate to drop blessings from the sky, but drafting the blueprint with their own hands. So laugh at the fog, bow to the pause, and sketch the plan. Your fire was never meant to burn randomly across the field, it was meant to illuminate the path you've chosen to walk. Sagittarius, let's draw the curtain back on the deeper truth that so many misunderstand about you. You are not, despite the gossip of lesser astrologers, a creature running from commitment as if it were a net meant to trap you. What you are truly doing is chasing expansion with the hunger of a soul that cannot stand still. You pursue horizons not because you are lost, but because your spirit is always in the act of becoming. This week, the stars underline that point with bold strokes. You are not merely shaping yourself into a better worker, lover, or leader, though those gains are part of the story. You are stepping into a higher level of awareness, one that others cannot help but notice. You are forming your own gravitational field, pulling opportunities and people into orbit around you. That meeting you dread? You will walk in not with nerves jangling, but with clarity in your voice and steadiness in your posture. That decision you have been circling for weeks? You will make it calmly, without the second guessing that once tripped you up. Why? Because you have done the unglamorous work. You prepared. You planned. You practiced discipline where you once relied only on improvisation. And that, Sagittarius, is the real triumph, not the applause that comes from the outside, but the quiet acknowledgement in the mirror that you are no longer winging it, you are leading it. It is that moment when destiny and discipline finally shake hands. But since no Sagittarius journey is complete without humor, let's address your medicine, laughter. You are a philosopher with a comedian's timing, capable of dropping profound truths between punchlines. If someone tells you this week to slow down, go ahead and smile politely, then explain that slowing down for you means easing from Mach 5 to Mach 2. That, in your world, counts as mindfulness. And if, at 3 in the morning, you feel the cosmic itch to text your ex or impulsively book a one-way ticket to Peru because you are convinced enlightenment is hiding in the Andes, pause. Don't do it. Pick up a journal instead and write a haiku about self-restraint. Something like, impulse burns my phone, Peru waits another day, sleep is cheaper now. Then, go back to bed. Your future self will thank you, and your bank account will breathe a sigh of relief. Humor, Sagittarius, is the alchemy that keeps you from burning out. It transforms chaos into comedy and allows you to remember that even in the grand and serious year of triumph 2025, it is perfectly acceptable to laugh at your own cosmic mess. Which brings us to the Archer's Blueprint, the guiding theme of this week. This is not about dimming your fire or taming your boundless energy. It is about focusing it with the precision of an arrow released from a steady hand. You are not called to chase 1,000 glittering goals, scattering your strength in every direction. You are being asked to choose 3 clear ones, build them carefully, and trust that recognition, love, financial growth, and transformation will naturally follow. The hum of change is already in the air, and all it requires is your presence, not your panic. What the universe asks is not performance, but purpose. Not noise, but clarity. When you stop scattering and start aiming, the world changes. And Sagittarius, you are not only part of that magic, you are the spark itself. You are one of the chosen ones walking boldly into the year of triumph 2025, not waiting for the story to be written, but writing it with your own unshakable hand. So embrace the plan, release the arrow, laugh at the mess, hug the moment, and live the truth. Because in the end, your triumph is not measured by how loudly the world claps, but by how deeply you know you are finally aligned with your own purpose. And if these words stirred something in you, carry that fire forward and yes, subscribe to Zodiac Talks Tarot. Because the path ahead is not only bright, it is yours to shape, one wild week at a time.